Host liberal. Mr. Trump, thank you for being here today. You've always been outspoken about your political beliefs, and we've heard you speak about many issues. But there's something I've always wondered, and I think the audience would be interested in hearing your take on it. You've often talked about your wife, Melania, in a very respectful way, but some critics have questioned your marriage dynamic over the years. How would you respond to that? Is it all just a media narrative, or is there truth to those claims? Trump leans back in his chair with a calm, knowing smile. Donald Trump. Well, let me tell you, Melania is an incredible woman. We have a strong marriage, and people don't understand how hard it is to be in the public eye like that. But to answer your question directly, it's funny. They never talk about how Melania was so incredibly supportive of me during the toughest times. She's not just a first lady. She's a force of her own. People forget that. The host nods, but is slightly caught off guard. This seems like standard Trump response, but they're ready for the twist. Host liberal. That's great to hear. But let's talk about something else that's been circulating lately. Some sources say there are differences between you and Melania, that she's been more distant recently. And that might affect your public image, don't you think? Trump suddenly shifts his tone, leaning forward with a sharp, focused expression. Donald Trump. I think it's funny. Every time someone brings up Melania, they want to turn it into a story, but they never ask the real question. The real question people should be asking is, why do they try so hard to create conflict between Melania and I? What are they really afraid of? Host looks visibly surprised. Host liberal. I'm not sure I follow.
What do you mean by that?
Trump smirks slightly, taking a deep breath before answering. Donald Trump. Well, think about it. The media has constantly tried to paint a story that isn't there. They try to build tension, to break up strong marriages, and to tear down families. But the real question that no one is asking is, why are they so obsessed with Melania and me? You see, they want division, they want conflict. But that's not going to happen here. The host looks taken aback. They weren't expecting this kind of deflection. Trump continues. Donald Trump. So, I'll say this. Melania and I are fine, and we're not giving into the narrative that the media wants to push. The question should be, why are they so desperate to see us fail? Maybe because they can't handle the fact that we're stronger than they'll ever be. The host stumbles slightly with their next question, clearly off balance. Host liberal.
Well,
I guess, the media does love a good story, but… Donald Trump, interrupting, exactly. And, they can twist and turn things all they want, but Melania and I are focused on what really matters. So, let's get back to talking about what's important. How can we make this country great again, right? The host pauses, clearly struggling with the sudden shift in tone. Host liberal. Of course, well, all right, Mr. Trump, let's get back to that topic then. Host liberal. All right, Mr. Trump, let's shift gears then. You've said a lot about your vision for the country, but we know you're no stranger to controversy. What do you say to those who argue that your leadership style created division rather than unity? How do you respond to the claims that your approach to governance polarized the nation? Trump chuckles lightly, a knowing smile on his face. Donald Trump. Well, that's the funny part. They've been saying that for years, but let me tell you this, sometimes to bring about change, you have to shake things up. You can't play it safe. And when you look at what happened during my time in office, people had to make a choice. We gave them a clear choice, and you know what? They loved it. The results speak for themselves. We had the best economy, the lowest unemployment, and our country was respected again. I didn't back down, and neither did Melania. We took on the hard issues head-on. The host listens, but still looks skeptical. Host liberal. Okay, but many would argue that your rhetoric inflamed tensions, especially when it came to race relations and handling social unrest. Doesn't that create an environment where division thrives? Trump raises a finger as if making a point, his tone firm but calm. Donald Trump. Look, we addressed issues head-on, but we also had to deal with people who didn't want to fix things. They wanted chaos. They wanted division because that sells. That's what some media outlets wanted to push. But you know who didn't fall for it? The American people. They knew what was happening. They saw through it. And we didn't let them get away with it. The host nods but is clearly trying to pivot the conversation back to the personal angle. Host, liberal. Interesting perspective, but let's go back to Melania for a moment. You've made it clear you support each other, but you don't really address the rumors, the private details of your marriage. Can you clear the air once and for all? Is there anything you'd like to set straight? Trump, sensing the host is still fixated on this angle, leans forward again, his voice low and direct. Donald Trump, you know what? Let's address it. The real issue isn't about Melania and me. It's about the fact that people are so obsessed with trying to tear others down. Why do we focus on the personal lives of leaders? If the American people knew how much time and energy was wasted on attacking us personally, instead of focusing on solving real problems, they'd be shocked. The host stares at Trump, momentarily stunned by the unexpected force of his response. Trump continues, with his voice growing slightly more passionate. Donald Trump. And let me tell you, Melania, she's not just my wife. She's a brilliant, strong woman. She's faced a lot and still, she stands strong. That's why I always have her back. It's time people stop trying to create issues that don't exist. What they should be asking is how they can do better themselves. The host remains silent for a brief moment, clearly processing the shift in tone. Finally, they gather themselves and look at the camera, addressing the audience. Host, liberal. Well, there you have it, folks. It's clear that President Trump stands by his wife and his principles, no matter the media storm. Mr. Trump, thank you for your candid responses today. Trump smiles, giving a slight nod. Donald Trump, thank you. It's time to focus on what really matters, getting this country back on track. And Melania and I, we're doing just fine. Believe me. The host gives a final, somewhat stiff smile before turning to the camera. Host, liberal. All right, that's all for today's interview. We'll be back after the break with more. Stay tuned. Host, liberal. Well, that was certainly an unexpected turn in our conversation with former President Donald Trump. As you saw, he didn't shy away from addressing some of the tough questions, especially those surrounding his marriage to Melania Trump. In the end, it's clear that both he and the First Lady are more than willing to stand strong against the media's scrutiny, but as we've seen, the narrative around them continues to stir controversy. Host pauses for a moment, glancing at the notes on their desk before continuing. Host, liberal. Whether you agree or disagree with President Trump, one thing's for certain. This kind of interview always leaves you thinking. Are we focusing too much on the personal lives of politicians rather than the policies that shape our nation? Or is it fair game, given the public figures involved? That's a question I'm sure many of you are now asking yourselves. The camera zooms in slightly as the host gets more serious. Host, liberal. Regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, the conversation about family, leadership, and media influence is more relevant than ever. It's easy to forget that at the heart of these political figures, there are real people, real relationships that are being dragged into the public eye for all the wrong reasons. Host takes a deep breath and looks directly into the camera. Host, liberal. We'll be right back after the break to discuss some of the key issues from this interview, and we'll hear from some of our panelists about what today's exchange really means. Stay with us. Scene cuts to a commercial break, showing advertisements for upcoming segments, the sound of soft background music playing. Later, post-interview discussion with a panel of experts. Panelist 1, political analyst. Well, that interview was certainly something. Trump's ability to turn any question, even about his personal life, into a political talking point is truly remarkable. I think he made a very deliberate choice to sidestep the deeper questions about his marriage, focusing instead on the bigger picture, media bias and political polarization. Panelist 2, media critic. Absolutely. The narrative surrounding Melania and Trump's marriage has been the subject of public fascination for years, but Trump was quick to shut it down. It's clear that he wants the focus back on what he perceives as a broader, more important issue, the media's attempt to create division. The irony is, by refusing to engage with the media's framing, he ends up making it a bigger story. Panelist 3, former political strategist.
Right.
And we saw that in real time during the interview. Trump effectively turned the table, forcing the host to answer for their framing of the question. It's classic Trump, never backing down and always staying on offense. But it also raises an interesting point. Should politicians be expected to discuss their personal lives in these interviews, or should the focus remain purely on their policy stances? Panelist 1, political analyst. I think that's the real takeaway. The media often wants to dig into the personal lives of figures like Trump because it's sensational. But at the end of the day, these figures are public servants, and it's their policies that should matter more. Whether or not they have a picture-perfect marriage is beside the point. The host nods thoughtfully and looks back at the camera. Host, liberal. Well, as you can see, there's a lot to unpack here. It's clear that Donald Trump knows how to deflect tough questions, and the media obsession with his personal life only seems to fuel that. But the real question for viewers is, are we letting the spectacle of personal drama overshadow the real issues at hand? Host turns to the panel. Host, liberal. Let's dive deeper into that when we return. Stay tuned, folks. Host, liberal. Welcome back. We've just had a fascinating conversation with Donald Trump, and as expected, it left us with a lot to think about. Now, let's unpack some of what happened. We saw him take a very strong stance on the question of his marriage with Melania, turning the focus away from personal details and onto broader political issues. Panelists, what are your initial thoughts? Panelist 1, political analyst. Well, as a political strategist, it's clear that Trump knew exactly what he was doing. He used the question about Melania as a shield to deflect from any potential criticism of his policies or leadership style. In a way, it was a masterclass in controlling the narrative. The more we try to dissect his personal life, the less we're talking about the real political battles he's fighting. Panelist 2, media critic. Exactly. The media, including this show, fell right into his hands. He knows that personal drama sells, and by refusing to play along, he shifted the entire narrative. It's a classic Trump move. Take a question that could have been used to undermine him and turn it into an opportunity to attack the media. And let's be honest, people are fascinated by Melania, but Trump wants us to focus on what he's doing on the national stage, not his personal relationships. Panelist 3, former political strategist. And that's the point, isn't it? The media loves to sensationalize personal stories, but in doing so, they often ignore the real issues. By putting the focus on his marriage or family, we miss the bigger picture. Whether we agree with his policies or not, he's forcing us to engage with his broader political platform. That's the brilliance of his strategy. He makes us chase the shiny object while he focuses on what matters to him, his political agenda. The host looks back at the camera, appearing reflective. Host, liberal. I think you're both right. But I still wonder if we can just brush aside the personal aspect entirely. After all, these figures are public leaders, and their personal lives often influence how the public perceives them. Melania, in particular, has been such an enigmatic figure. She rarely speaks publicly, and when she does, it's often under very controlled circumstances. So, should we not have some curiosity about her role in all of this? Panelist 2, media critic. Of course, curiosity is natural. But we have to ask ourselves, at what point does that curiosity cross a line into exploitation? There's this constant fascination with the First Lady, especially with her silence. But when we focus too much on that, we risk overshadowing her own potential impact or the work she's doing on her own terms. Melania isn't just the wife of Donald Trump. She's a person, and if she chooses to keep a low profile, that should be respected. Panelist 1, political analyst. Exactly. The fixation on her personal life, her style, and her every move is part of the media circus. She's not the one running for office, and it's not fair to make her marriage the center of our political conversations. We saw Trump's response today. He won't let that kind of narrative dictate the terms of the debate. He's playing chess, while the media is stuck playing checkers. Host, liberal. Right, and Trump's strategy is undeniably effective. But does that mean we should stop asking these questions altogether? Is there a fine line between pressuring politicians to open up about their personal lives and respecting boundaries? Panelist 3, former political strategist. There absolutely is a fine line, and that's where the media has to be more discerning. We live in a world where personal details are often used as ammunition in the political arena. But Trump, in particular, has been able to turn those very details into a shield, blocking out the real issues. It's a powerful tactic, and it's something all politicians should be mindful of, because once the media sinks its teeth into your personal life, it can be hard to focus on anything else. The host nods thoughtfully. Host liberal. That's certainly a valid point. And while the political discourse is about ideas, policies, and the future of the country, it's hard to deny the human interest factor. So where does that leave us? Do we continue asking these personal questions, or do we shift the narrative entirely? Panelist 1, political analyst. I think we should ask the hard questions, but with an understanding of context. Personal lives are one thing, but when it comes to political leaders, the focus should always return to their actions, their policies, and their governance. Trump has shown us how powerful it can be to push back when the media crosses that line. And maybe that's the lesson we should take from this conversation today. The host looks directly into the camera once again, as if summarizing the debate. Host liberal. It seems the takeaway here is clear. While personal lives can provide insight into political figures, they should never overshadow the real issues that define their leadership. Trump's ability to turn this interview into a conversation about media bias and political polarization is a testament to his mastery of the public narrative. Whether you agree with his tactics or not, you can't deny the impact he has on how the media frames the discussion. Host takes a deep breath, preparing to wrap up. Host liberal. Thank you to our panel for your insightful analysis. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in today. We'll continue to monitor the developments from this interview and keep you updated on the latest news. As always, stay informed and stay engaged. We'll be back tomorrow with more coverage. Until then, take care. Host liberal. We've received an overwhelming amount of feedback from you, our viewers, following today's interview with Donald Trump. Some of you are applauding his ability to turn a potentially awkward moment into a political statement, while others believe the focus should have remained on his policies. Either way, one thing's clear. The conversation surrounding Trump is never anything short of captivating. The camera zooms in slightly on the host, emphasizing the gravity of the topic. Host liberal. And it's not just us who are talking about it. Let's take a look at some of the comments and reactions from social media, where the discussion is already in full swing. The screen transitions to display a series of tweets and viewer comments, including some controversial ones. Viewer tweet 1. Trump dodged the personal questions like a pro. It's almost like he wanted the media to get caught up in their own narrative. Viewer tweet 2. He's right though. Why are we so obsessed with Melania's role? Let's focus on the policies and the future. Viewer tweet 3. I can't believe the host didn't push back harder when Trump turned the conversation. That was a missed opportunity. Viewer tweet 4. No matter what, this whole interview just shows how much the media loves drama. Melania and Trump are just like any other couple. Host liberal. As you can see, there's quite a bit of debate happening. Some viewers are defending Trump's stance, saying he was right to shift the focus back to his political message, while others feel that the personal angle still plays a crucial role in how we understand the person behind the policies. The host glances at the panelists, then returns to the camera. Host liberal. Before we go, we wanted to hear from you, our panelists, one last time. Do you think this strategy of deflecting personal questions is becoming a trend in political interviews? Is it something we're going to see more of in the future? Panelist 2, media critic. Absolutely. The personal aspects of politicians' lives have always been a part of the media narrative, but we've entered a new era where politicians like Trump are far more strategic about how they control the story. This is just the beginning. Moving forward, we'll likely see more politicians using the media's obsession with their private lives against them, forcing us to focus on what they want us to focus on. Panelist 1, political analyst. I agree. But this is a double-edged sword. While Trump's ability to turn the tables is effective, it doesn't always work in every situation. Eventually, the public will want to know more about how a politician's personal life shapes their decision-making. It's a balance, and navigating that is going to be key for any political figure. Panelist 3, former political strategist. And let's not forget, Trump has built a brand that thrives on media attention. He knows exactly how to keep the spotlight on himself, even when the questions aren't about him. This is part of his appeal, especially with his base. It's about control of the message, and he's been a master at it. The host nods, visibly contemplating their words. Host liberal. It's fascinating to think about the implications for the future of political interviews. Will we ever get a straightforward answer from politicians on their personal lives, or will the deflections continue? The camera pulls back as the host shifts to the final segment of the show. Host liberal. Well, that's a discussion that will continue long after the interview ends. But for today, one thing's clear. Donald Trump's ability to pivot, control the narrative, and turn the spotlight away from personal matters is a key element of his political style. It's a strategy that keeps us guessing and always coming back for more. Whether you love him or hate him, you can't deny that he knows how to keep the conversation going. The host pauses and looks at the camera, offering a final reflection. Host liberal. As always, we appreciate you tuning in. The conversation about Trump's interview, his marriage, and his leadership will no doubt continue to spark debate. But whether you're a supporter or a critic, one thing is certain. The media landscape has changed, and the rules of engagement have evolved. Thank you to our panel. Thank you to our viewers, and we'll see you again tomorrow for another lively discussion. The camera zooms out, showing the host standing as the credits begin to roll. The music slowly fades as the screen cuts to a promotional teaser for the next episode.